want to share with y'all some of my all time favorite books. I started reading more consistently in 2022, but towards like the back half. So like that August, I picked up um It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, and it was a book that kind of just hooked me and got me back on my reading journey. So, I want to share with y'all some of my favorite books from essentially like 2023 to now, like halfway through 2024. Um, these books, they're just like they mean so much to me, and I'm obsessed with like the writing and everything. Um, but these are books I highly recommend. So I'm gonna get us started with one of the books I recently read, which is gonna be Beach Read by Emily Henry. This book I picked up like a month ago, and I think what I really enjoyed about this book is that it hooked me within the first chapter. I was going through like a book slump, and so this was like the second book I read trying to get out of my slump, and I think it really did the trick. They hooked me. I was like always wanted to read it when I was reading it. Um, did I read it as fast as I wanted to? No, but that doesn't matter. But I really gravitated towards it every single time I was wanting to read. And then um once I finished it, I was like, wait, I really like the story. I like some of the things that she was talking about in terms of just like grief and progressing like in your life and like what that looks like and like where you thought you would be versus like where you are or like what you feel is expected of you um because of who you are and like how you sometimes things can change like your outlook on life and stuff, and I really appreciated that. So I really enjoyed this book and I highly recommend it. But like I said, this was kind of like a recent read, so I definitely recommend this for summer and stuff too because it's set on a lake, and it's set on a lake I think in Michigan. So you kind of get a little bit of like the summer vibes. It's also like set around 4th of July, so I think it's a good read for that. Last summer, I picked up a couple different books. Um, one of them being Twisted Love. This is the first book in the Twisted series by Anna Huang. I really like this book. I think it was a good start to the series. The series centers around four best friends. So this first book, it's Alex and Ava. So Ava is a college student. She's left to kind of like fend for her, not fend for herself, but her brother is going away on a trip, and so he asked his best friend Alex to kind of help like make sure his sister's okay while he's gone. And that's something that kind of starts Alex and Ava to go on this course of like being more connected to each other. What's really cool is like Alex is a billionaire, so he has a lot of money, in the way that he kind of goes about his like day and like his life. The way he goes about his day and his life is pretty cool and interesting. So I really like that. But yeah, I think it was cute because he's very like this like hard, stern guy, and he's very sweet and soft with Ava, and I really like that. The rest of the series centers around Ava's friend group, so I think it's just a nice way to kick it off, and then throughout the rest of the series, you get glimpses of them. But this one I think was like one of my favorites out of the entire series. But yeah, I really love this book. It was probably one of my favorites for the summer last year. Like I said, it's a good start into the series. Um, but yeah, it's really cute. Also, last summer, I picked up Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This book was so cute. I fell in love with it. It's centered around Alex, who's the president's son, and Prince Henry, who's a prince of England. He has a sister in this book, and I love that their relationship as like siblings is really cute. But Alex attends a like I forget what the word is, but he attends an event, and it's in England, and it's with Prince Harry. He's there, and you kind of at the start sense that they don't necessarily like each other, that they've kind of had like an interaction that went wrong. And Alex was obsessed with Prince Henry when he was younger, and then he met him and he was like, I don't really I don't really know how I feel about him. And so it kind of goes off of that where they don't really get along, and then over time they just have to do more and more like things together, and then they really connect. And because obviously Alex is in the US and Harry is in the UK, they have to communicate over like text, email, phone calls, stuff like that. And I just really love the way that they talk to each other and the way they communicate with each other was so sweet and so cute. And I loved it. And it kind of like goes over like them struggling with like not only their like identity, but also like how they are portrayed like in public because they are public figures because of who their family members are and stuff, or maybe just who they are, but both. And I just really like the way that that's portrayed in here. And I also like that Alex is from Texas. He's from Austin, which isn't too far from here, so I really appreciate that. It's like there's some cute little nods to Texas that I think were cute and just like made sense. So I really liked this book. Last year, I also read Daisy Jones and the Six, and this book was just so good to me. The year before, I had read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is another book I highly recommend. But it was kind of the first book I got into, so I was like, oh, I don't like, I know I like her writing, but this is different. So Daisy Jones and the Six is centered around a fictional band, Daisy Jones and the Six, and it goes over their like the creation of the band and like the band members and like how they kind of got into being the group all the way up until their abrupt end to their world tour. Is it a world tour? I think it is. Of their like album that was like number one and everything. And you kind of get the point of view of all the different band members, because it's set in interview style as well. So I really like it. It was a different format or like writing style for me. And it was really cute because like you get and it's also broken up into certain parts. So you get like the beginning, and then you get like the album, and then you get them the like tour and stuff. But it kind of starts off like each chapter you get like a little bit of like a description to kind of set the tone, or not chapter, but each part you get a description to kind of set the tone, and then from there you just kind of get everything else like in interview style, and I really appreciated that. This has also been adapted for TV through Amazon, and it's a really, really good show. I feel like they did really well of like getting the best parts of the book and portraying it in TV. Um, yeah, and it's nice because I feel like it translates easily as well too because it is interview style. So you get that same type of aspect when you're watching the TV show, and I really like that. And this book was like it just opened up a whole different world like for me. Like I fell in love with Taylor Jenkins Reid through One True Loves, and then this one kind of like solidified my love for her. And then I eventually read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is another one I highly recommend. I think a lot of people that have read that book always highly recommend that book. But after that, I got into Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book did something for me. It did something to me. It did a lot, honestly. I am obsessed with this book. Part of that has to do with the fact that I am Nina Riva. Like everything she goes through, I think I've been through at some point in my life. And in terms of just like her family and in terms of like everything. But essentially this book is centered around the Riva family. The Rivas are popular for two reasons. So first is their father. Their father is Mick Riva, who's like this like rock star. He is very famous, and as they get older, the Rivas siblings end up making their own fame. So Nina is known as like a surfer model. So she has a bunch of different like things that she's done, and she's kind of been in the media quite a bit. Just like this is technically part of the same universe that Daisy Jones and the Six is in, but this is set in like the 80s, and it's set in Malibu. So the Riva family, their mother opened up a restaurant and they own that restaurant. And it kind of just goes through like Nina and all her siblings and stuff and the backstory of like her parents. and then up until like where she is now. And it's all centered around this party that the Riva family is known for having at the end of the summer. I really appreciate it because you kind of get bits and pieces of the siblings, but the main character is Nina. And I just, like I said, everything she goes through, I feel like I've been through at one point, and the way it's written and portrayed was just so like honest and real and relatable for me that I loved this book. Like, I truly, truly love this book. This is one of the only books that I've ever rated 5 stars because I felt like I was on these pages, and I don't think I've ever felt that way about a book. So I really appreciated that about this one. So I highly, highly recommend this one. The writing style is pretty cool. It's broken up into like hour by hour of the day of the Riva party. But like I said, throughout all of that, you get sprinkles of like the past and then also the present. And I really liked that a lot. So this one's like a 10 star, a 10 out of 5. I love this book. I'm planning on rereading it this summer when I go on vacation. So we'll see what happens. But I love this book so much. Anyways, the next book I'm recommending, I read this book at the start of last year. I really wanted to get into the series because the next book was being released. And I recommend this series overall, but this book was my favorite out of the series. And that's going to be Terms and Conditions, which is book 2 in the Dreamland Billionaire series. I thought this was an interesting concept. I think this is one of my first like marriage of convenience, and I really liked it. So this series is centered around Declan and Iris. Declan is the oldest grandchild of this guy. I don't remember his name, but he's essentially like a knockoff Walt Disney. So when he passes away, what he plans to do is instead of giving the entire company to his son, he wants to give it to his grandsons, but his grandsons have to complete certain tasks. So Declan's task, because he's the oldest, is to marry and have a child with somebody. And he has to do this to get his inheritance, which is a third of the company. And each of the brothers has to do this. They have different tasks to fulfill to get their third of the company and keep their father from getting the company, right? Declan has to marry somebody, and his assistant, Iris, sets up a marriage for him with this woman, and it falls through. So, because Iris was going to get this like large bonus, I believe, from getting Declan a woman to marry, once he got his inheritance, she didn't want that to fall through. So she was like, okay, if she bailed on you, I'm just gonna marry you because at the end of the day, or I think he asked her like, marry me because I need to get this done, and I like it's just we need to get this done. And she's like, okay. Well, of course they get married. She used to be his assistant. So to everybody else, it's like, that's interesting, but also it kind of makes sense. And they kind of have like this, they're forced to be together. And I really like it. Like the way that Declan cares for her is so sweet. And he's kind of the same like Alex and Ava, where he's like this hard, stern guy. He's a billionaire, like this and that. And he's like kind of like ruthless with everybody else. But with Iris, he's like so sweet with her. But they also have this interesting banter because Iris has been his assistant. So they have this kind of like she's not afraid to call him out, but he's also very sweet and kind to her, and I just kind of like that. I think it's kind of funny, and it like played off really well in this book, which is why it was one of my favorites. But I loved this book. um the third book in the series is Final Offer, and it follows Declan's brother, Cal, and he essentially his job is to sell the lake house that his grandfather owned that they would go to when they were younger, and it's set in this place called Lake Wisteria. Well, because it's set in Lake Wisteria, we meet some other new characters, and one of the new characters we meet is Julian, who is in Love Redesigned. Um, this book is centered around Julian and Dahlia, and they both work in like the home business. So Dahlia's known for being like this famous interior designer, and she used to have a TV show with her ex-fiance. Her ex-fiance and her go through this like big public breakup, and she decides to move back home to Lake Wisteria. Julian and Dahlia have this like long history. Julian and Dahlia's family are very close connected, whereas like I think their mothers are best friends. And they went to school together. They went to school together, and then they decided to go to college together. And part of that was because Julian and Dahlia were rivals. They were academic rivals all throughout school. They both were like competing for like top, and I think Julian got second. But when Dahlia comes back, she's still reeling from her breakup, and Julian's mother is kind of like meddling and telling him like, "Oh, help Dahlia! Like she like get her help. Let's help get her back on her feet. Like she's not doing too great." So that's kind of what happens, and they're forced to kind of work on this home together. And through that, they kind of rebuilt that connection that they had, because they were closely connected before she got with her husband, or her fiance, and went off to do her own show. And you kind of just break down those walls for the both of them, and I really appreciated it because I felt like that's another thing. Like Julian and Dahlia are both like Hispanic or like Latinos, and I really appreciated the banter between them and the way their mothers are kind of incorporated in this, and also just kind of like the slip in and out of the different languages. I thought that was kind of on the nose. But I really love the way that their moms meddle in their life. I feel like that's so real and honest, especially for like us Hispanics. Like that's just something that happens all the time. So the way that the parents do it in this book was kind of like it just was something I related to because I'm like, yep, I felt that. I've been there, you know. So I really love this book. I think it was a cute, fun, light, not light, but cute, fun read. The next book I'm recommending is probably something that I will never stop recommending. This series as a whole is just freaking insane. Insane. It's an insane series. Um, but I loved it. I recently got caught up and I just was like, okay, but these are kind of the two most recent books I read. So it's gonna be the Magnolia Park series, but the most recent ones I've read was Daisy Hates the Great Undoing. So this is the second Daisy Hates book. What's really cool about the Magnolia Park series is that Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates are part of the same, or like they're part of the same universe. And the first two books and the second two books are happening at the same time. So Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates, it centers around two separate couples. So Magnolia Parks is Magnolia and BJ, and then Daisy Hates is Daisy and Christian. And so you kind of get a little bit of the both couples be in during each of the books, but um you're set in the different couples' point of view and they're happening at the same time. So you can some people have tandem read it. I did not tandem read it. I read them separately, and I felt like I kind of liked that because I wasn't there was still things that like I wasn't necessarily expecting even though I had read the other one. So first it's Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates. Then next, a year after those two books end, um, in that timeline, a year later, you get Magnolia Parks, The Long Way Home, and then you get Daisy Hates The Great Undoing. And those two books are also centered around the same time frame. So I really love this book because you get a lot of insight with like this couple and like the characters in here in Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home, but you get a certain character's point of view in this book, and I'm obsessed. Like, I used to be so confused as to why people were like obsessed with Julian, which you get Julian's point of view in Daisy Hates and Daisy Hates the Great Undoing because Julian is Daisy's older brother. But when I read this book, this was something that to me, I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, I never understood why people were so obsessed with this book, and now I get it. Like, I fully understand. It's just a great writing. There's so many points where I was just like in awe of how this came out of somebody's mind. Like, Jessa Hastings knows how to like really keep me entertained. That was something that I was like, oh, she's got me. Like, I was fully invested in this book, fully invested in the characters. And then she always does something that in her writing to me that I'm just like, I can't get out of my head. Like for this book, she made, I think the word is like, she made like a metaphor um for something happening in one of the characters' lives. And it's just something that she mentioned throughout the book. And then at the end, when you finally get the full picture, I was like, why'd you do this to me? Like, like, I cannot believe like you wrote that because what the heck? I would have never been able to think about that. But that was the perfect metaphor for that situation, and I loved it so 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 much. It was just it was immaculate for me. Like I it was so great. Um but I really loved this book. And then, not too long after, I read Magnolia Parks Into the Dark, which is the third book in a part of the Magnolia and BJ like story. And this is the last book we'll get in Magnolia and BJ's point of view. And I really loved it. There was a lot of times where I was kind of like, I had to like take a break because it kind of was a lot for me, but it was such good writing, and I felt like it was the perfect end to this couple, not end to the couple, but end to their point of view from this couple. I felt like if we were to get more of this couple, like it's just the cherries, like it's just like the sprinkles, on top of it, but everything was full. Like I was fully obsessed with it. There's times where like when I was doing my annotations the other day, I was trying to like not reread it because I was getting stuck rereading it and crying again. So, yeah, love this book. Loved it so, 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 so much. But yeah, I definitely recommend the Magnolia Park series. I think that's one that I just like I said, like I'll never stop recommending that. It really just like has a special place in my heart. I can't get over it. So it's like it just makes me like happy. But the next series that I've read and I've been recommending to people, and I just like it's one of my favorites. I think the writing is great too. Finding 13. I binged this book. Like fully binged this book and this book. Like I was not expecting that. Like when people picked it up and people were recommending it to me, I was like, "Hmm, it's kind of long. It might take me like a month." 2 days, girl. 2 days. 2 days to get through her. Anyways, I love this book. These two books are part of the Boys of Tommen series. This is book one and book two of the Boys of Tommen series. It is centered around Johnny Kavanaugh and Shannon. What's her last name? Shannon Lynch. Johnny is like star rugby player. He's set to go play pro. They're still in high school, but he's well known, and it kind of feeds into like the culture of how big the sport is in Ireland and stuff. Um but it's set in also 2005. So Shannon is forced to go to Tommen College because she's facing bullying in in the public school that she's in. So her mom finally decides to pull her out of the public school and put her in a private school so she doesn't have to get bullied and stuff. So first day of school, Shannon's really nervous and she ends up realizing that she left her phone in like the science lab. So she has to run across campus, and in that she ends up running across the rugby pitch and ends up and I like ends up getting hit by the ball because Johnny threw it to like threw it at one of his teammates, and the teammate like ducked it and it hit her instead and essentially concussed her. So that was like one of the funniest meet cutes I've ever like had ever read. So it's really funny, but it also has some mature scenes to it. It can get very dark and sad, and there were times where I was kind of like I was really gut wrenched by what was happening in the story. Um, but I really like the way Johnny and Shannon's like relationship builds throughout this. And essentially like the what we get at the last part of like Johnny and Shannon, it just kind of like was a nice way to kind of like close off this book and start off the next book. But this one really builds their friendship. Um, and I feel like a lot of times romance books, they want to get really quickly into like the couple being together. And then it's like if we get a series of it, the rest of it is like them facing struggles as a couple. And I felt like I really liked it because it built them up as friends and building that trust that's needed in a relationship. Um, Part of the reason I feel like I really like that was because like that's something I've been through where it's like me and my husband were friends for the longest time before we started dating, and I felt like that was just something that I related to a lot in here, was just how they built up their friendship and their closeness with each other to then be able to share more and build on that. And essentially, like I said, it's kind of like it's a slow build up to their eventual like relationship. And then you get keeping 13, which they're in the relationship and then they're facing struggles of just like being young and being together and having to still deal with like mature concepts that they are very young for, but it's just something that happens in life. And I really like that about this book. And then with both of these books, you get like the side characters, and the side characters make the very, very sad parts um easy to get through, because right after that you get the really, really fun, like giggly, like dramatic not dramatic, but dramatic funny parts. And I feel like I really like that, and this book builds a lot on the side characters that you eventually see throughout the rest of the series. So after this book, we get two books that are centered around Joey Lynch, which is Shannon's older brother. And I just felt like it was a nice way to kind of start off the series and get into it, because there is a lot of heavy content in here and it can get very sad and like heartbreaking. But it very much got um like like even the load of the heaviness with all the like fun and humor you get from the characters in this book. So I feel like it was a nice kind of like balance, and I feel like that's hard sometimes because sad books can are just like sad sometimes. So yeah. But that's essentially all of the books I highly recommend. Um, like I said, I've only technically been consistently reading for about 2 years now, and these are some of the books I've just picked up. And I know that these are like very, very popular books, but if you haven't picked them up, I'm just another person telling you to pick them up. Like, pick them up. But I really, really think that they're good books, and definitely should be shared with so many people. Um, and all of these authors, I've been through at least more than one of their books, and I highly recommend them. Yeah, I've read like at least more than one of their books, and I just really recommend these authors. So no matter what you take from this, even if it's not these books in general, like these authors are really good ones to kind of just dive into and get different types of things from. So highly recommend. Let me know down below if there's any other if y'all have any recommendations, or if you've read any of these books, what books you really liked, and like why you like them. I love hearing that stuff. I feel like that's where I thrive the most, is like being able to like just talk to other people about books. So